All right, thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Jamie Tesler. I am the Executive Director of a brand new organization called the Mass Mobility Hub, and we have a great panel for you. We want to take a step deeply into the world of transportation mobility, our streets, our transit system, and really talk to people at the cutting edge of technology, at innovation and leadership, and thought leadership, and really see what's happening out there and help us together imagine the future of our streets and our roads and our transit system. So again, appreciate everybody joining us for this panel. The first thing I want to do is just let's go through each of the panelists. They'll introduce themselves, their organization.
Hi everybody, I'm Reggie Ramos. I am the Executive Director of T4MA, or Transportation for Massachusetts. We are a coalition of diverse organizations, community-based organizations, nonprofit organizations, all working in a wide swath of social justice issues like housing, public health, climate, EJs. And we all believe that what underpins all these issues is transportation. So we advocate for just and equitable transportation, and we believe that an equitable transportation system is a sustainable transportation system.
Hi everyone, I'm Shannon Delaney. I'm Director of Public Affairs for It's Electric. We are a curbside electric vehicle charging company. We're about 3 years old, and we are really purpose-built for cities. Our two main innovations are how we power our chargers and the hardware form factor. We take power from nearby buildings instead of connecting directly to the utility, which really cuts down the installation time and the installation costs. And then we are also the first company in North America to offer a detachable cord charging model, which really improves the accessibility, reliability, and future-proofs the investment that cities are making in building out their public EV charging infrastructure.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris Moore. I'm a Director of Sales with Net Zero Logistics. We are the largest cargo e-bike operator in the United States. In 2022, we partnered with the City of Boston for the Boston Delivers program, which is making deliveries through e-cargo bikes throughout the City of Boston.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Yibiao Zhao. I'm the CEO, co-founder at IC. IC, we're spin out from MIT. So at MIT, we're studying how to build a cognitive model to enable robots to understand the human intelligence and how to interact with human in complex environments. After we spin out, we build a startup that currently building autonomous vehicles, like operating in the logistics yard, logistics centers, ports, distribution centers. Different from other autonomous driving applications, we focus on the private property, private lot. So today we have already commercial deploy our autonomous vehicles. We have, unlike the others, we have already completely removed the human drivers, and the system is driving fully autonomously by itself at a customer site. So we're very excited about the deployment today, and then we have a lot of synergy about not just autonomous vehicles, but EVs, and happy to unfold that.
All right, thank you all. And as we're here today at Climate Tech, the first thing that we should really talk about, and the key part of all the different elements and modes of our transportation system, it is the biggest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions of any sector in Massachusetts, across the nation, I believe, and is one of the largest in the world. It's also one of the harder ones and has had a challenge seeing reductions. And so in this panel today, and as you hear with people from impacting different modes, ideas in different ways, we wanted to bring you a conversation really about how vital the transportation sector is, how vital change is, and really hear from each of you in different elements of that, how they see change. So, Yibiao, I want to start with you first, and then maybe we can come back this way. And let's talk a little bit deeper. We've introduced a little bit of each of your organizations. We've introduced a little bit of what you're doing. But let's get into sort of mission and really talk about it from a climate perspective too. How are we driving change? Where do you see it fitting into this? And again, because we have different companies here and different organizations that touch different modes, interested to hear from each of you on that as we go down the panel.
Of course, happy to get started. As I mentioned, we are a company working on autonomy, autonomous technology. But as you know, like autonomy and the electrification are two like very correlated kind of waves that were going to disrupt the industry pretty significantly. And then the impact of technology towards the climate and also the sustainability, I can divide it into like near term and the long term. So near term, today, even a lot of our customers use the diesel vehicles. We see a lot of waste of fuel and inefficiencies in their current operation. For example, our system estimated there's around like 15% of the fuel saving just based on the optimization of the operation by itself. For example, the truck drivers often, when they move a load, they don't know where each trailer is. They have to drive around the yard, look for a trailer because they lack of transparency. And that is 15% of moves, right? By saving that, by just automating and know what it is where in the yard, we can already save 15% of fuel. Plus, there's also another 10% can be further reduced by you just turn off the engine whenever you finish your move, right? Rather than keep it running, because human drivers, usually they don't have to do that, right? They keep trucks running, they look at their phones until they see the next move. So just those optimization can already save pretty significantly. And then on top of that, we know the future is electric vehicles, right? Especially in the truck space, there's a lot of innovation, companies working on electric trucks. And one of the problems two problems with electric vehicle. One is infrastructure, right? You need the charging stations. You need the infrastructure to support autonomous vehicles. And then for our customers who operate in the warehouses, they often operate 24/7, and they don't have much downtime to say, okay, you go charge, let's 4 hours or 5 hours, you go charge the vehicle. But the benefit with autonomous technology is you can leverage the opportunity charging, right? So whenever the vehicle, there's no move, you can send the vehicle to the charging station and even wireless charging, right? And so that eliminates the downtime needed to charge the vehicle. And that accelerates the deployment, make electric vehicles much more attractive to a customer.
So, and I appreciate that, and I think it's important, and we'll move to you, Chris, next. But I really appreciate the context, and I think it's important here because we talk a lot about EV and electrification, and people are beginning to be more familiar with it, especially at an event like this. But the ways that AI and AV are actually going to have the potential, if we do it right, to have positive climate impacts is something that I think is really important to hear, and particularly the freight and logistics side, behind the fence side that people don't see is, I think, really important. Chris, you, though, come at this at a very different angle, but again, sort of similar benefits. So can you talk a little bit deeper about company and the product? And
yeah, for sure.
We have one here to see.
Yeah, so just one simple word I'll say, osmosis, right? When you look at e-cargo bikes, you think of the traditional biker, or you think of a biker with a backpack. When you see osmosis, you see an e-cargo bike that has 60 cubic feet, can haul 500 pounds, right? You work with the retailers, you work with shippers. They think, oh, wow, that's how big that is. That's osmosis to us. Or you see an individual that wants to buy a product and they want it to be on an e-cargo bike. That's osmosis. So what we do in the marketplace is we try to get our bikes in the places where everybody sees, to drive the behavior of the culture, of the community, to convert. For example, in 2022, we took 27,000 diesel trucks off the road just by converting to e-cargo bikes. And that's tiny to us. And we believe through osmosis, this will gain more traction and more communities, states, federal institutions will look more to the e-cargo bike solution.
Shannon?
Yeah, so I think at It's Electric, we really think that infrastructure is the #1 barrier that people are facing when they're trying to make a decision of whether or not to make an EV their next vehicle purchase. And that's especially true for people who live in cities and who don't have access to that garage or driveway where they can take advantage of at-home charging. I'm sure that many of you know that 85% of charging currently happens at home. And so if you don't have that at-home charging, it's really difficult to think about spending your weekend fighting over a charger at the Whole Foods parking lot, or really having that logistical challenge of having to rely on a public charging network that just simply isn't there yet. NREL estimates that we need 1 million public level 2 chargers deployed in the next 6 years, and we currently have about 125,000. So we really need to just completely change the scale and the pace at which we're deploying EV infrastructure. And I think that a lot of things are coming together to make this the moment that we really can do that. From the bipartisan infrastructure law to programs at Mass CEC that are rolling out for EV infrastructure, we can do that because the public sector is sending that market signal. And It's Electric, what we're really trying to do is take that signal and then give cities a solution that addresses their biggest problems that they're facing in terms of drawing power and having a form factor that works for their city streets. And really making it possible for people who live in multifamily buildings, who are renters, who are not in that early adopter pool of EVs, but who are going to be the ones who really make the transition meaningful and really move us into the next phase of EVs being the dominant technology on the road.
So Reggie, you have to think broadly about the whole mobility system and think big picture about sort of where we're going and vision. So hearing some of the different avenues and the different approaches from the different panelists, I'd love to hear your thoughts as you think about mission and climate and our mobility system.
So in our organization, we're part of many kinds of conversations, rooms of conversations where we're talking about competing crises or parallel crises. So there's climate, there's mobility, there's urbanization, and without a doubt, climate is the driver for all the changes that are happening in mobility. More so, we're seeing that in the urban areas, right? And so from a macro standpoint, we feel that public transit is indeed the backbone to a sustainable transportation network. And that what that means is that all the complementing technologies, all of that will feed into the public transit and vice versa. When we do not have a safe or reliable, affordable public transit, or much worse, if we don't have any available, we are really missing that important piece or that component that pushes us forward into a sustainable future. I think that in Massachusetts in particular, we are talking about transportation funding, and much of that really hinges on how much we're going to invest in public transit. Yes?
Well, on that one, sorry, can you say, so one of the tensions there too is, many of us here are very, including people on the panel, is we think a lot about electrification and moving more towards, EVs, but that has tensions with how we finance transportation. So,
yeah, there are natural tensions in that there are different modes, but I don't believe them to be in contradiction with each other. I think transportation planning has to be capacious enough to consider all these options. When we don't have these options, that's when we're in trouble, right? So when we're looking at the long-range transportation planning, we're really looking at what are the climate goals we're looking at. And we have to name it, like how much VMT are we going to reduce? We cannot say that we're just going to reduce it. Naming this really exhibits sort of a commitment to make transportation systems that way. I think that when we speak of just and equitable transportation, a necessary component to that, and I go back to my earlier statement, Jamie, is that the biggest driver now of any mobility change or challenge is really climate.
So let's just go there too. Now we've talked a little bit about where each of you are coming from, the ideas you're leading with your companies or organization. So in part of this, including the topic, pathways of tomorrow. So let's lean a little bit into the future, okay? You're all working hard, all of you on the panel, about change and driving that change. So Reggie, I think it's where you just went to, take the next step through that, that we need to actually not just say we want to reduce VMT, we actually have to put a number on it. Can you talk a little bit about, forecast now a little bit for me? Where do you see us headed? What are some of the, maybe in a positive, or even if you have challenges ahead, what do you see the next years as we go through change? And then I'm going to want each of you to weigh in, both from a company perspective, but also you guys are really out there with different versions and touching technology. Where do we see things going? What are some of the big trends we're looking at?
I'm really happy we're talking about this right now, because in Massachusetts, this is the opportune time. We're talking about our climate ambitions as well as transportation funding. So this is the opportune time to talk about the challenges that we're facing in terms of laying out a more efficient and sustainable transportation system. I think it's also very important that we are noting the housing crisis, because there is an opportunity to be made here. We were talking about infrastructure and AVs. Where do we put the bikes? This all tells one story, right? And it's a story of visioning, of how we see Massachusetts from a macro standpoint, but also from the standpoint of neighborhoods, communities. You talked about transportation being the biggest contributor to emissions. The fact is, low-income folks and communities of color bear the brunt of that. And so when we're planning, we take advantage of these crises and make them an opportunity to create this blueprint of how we envision transportation to be. I also think we are in a very unique position in Massachusetts, because we are setting our long-range transportation plan for 2050 that sets us up. We should be naming all these goals and climate goals, and the alignment with other technologies that are out there has to be present and recognized in these plans.
So, Jan.
Yeah, so I think Boston, we're really excited to be here. Obviously, as also a Brooklyn-based company, we're excited to be invited. And part of the reason I think we were invited is because the city of Boston put together a curbside EV charging proposal, or request for proposals rather, last summer, and It's Electric was one of 2 vendors selected for that, which we're really pleased about. We're going to be deploying 225 chargers here over the next 5 years. And to Reggie's point about really making sure that we're going to be making those investments in places that we really need it, it's something that we're really committed to being aligned with the city's goal to have every single household within a 10-minute walk of a public EV charger. And so we're not going to be investing necessarily in the places that already have that infrastructure, but in places where there are those gaps. So I think that that's really important. Sometimes, and a lot of times, those neighborhoods overlap with places that have high rates of Uber and Lyft drivers, of TNCs, and those are folks who not only do their companies have goals to switch over to 100% electric vehicles by the end of the decade, but they are also going to be more likely to be living in multifamily homes or renters, so might not have access to that at-home vehicle charging. So really trying to look at all of the different plans, both at the public and the private sector level, to overlay when we're making these investments as to where we need to do that first, so that there is that tipping point and people can see that the technology is something that they can trust and that they can invest in on a personal level. I think the final piece of this is, again, the funding. And in addition to the federal funding, what has been really helpful is Governor Healy's announcement earlier this year or maybe last year about the new funding for EV infrastructure, specifically calling out curbside EV infrastructure. So Massachusetts is really leading the way in terms of calling out that specific place for EV charging as being important to serve people who park on the street. So that's all. It's all coming together to really have a promising future for EV charging and that transition.
Yeah, I think one of the big things as we look at change is the safety, right? We all want to become more green, right? You look at an e-cargo bike, there's batteries that are available, not the correct ones, and there's safety ones, there's safety concerns. The infrastructure to build the battery charging is crucial to the scale, because you will see individuals, communities adapt to the e-bikes or electric charging, and they will not have the infrastructure to keep expanding. It's one thing that will explode very quickly, and you come to a standstill because you can't safely charge your batteries. And I think there needs to be more discussion about that as we grow and build this infrastructure. And then second, as you touched upon, the policies that are going on, the grants that are available. For us small companies, I mean, those go a long ways. And just the transparency to those right now, it can be difficult at times. But the more we get visibility into what's going on out there, the better for all of us.
Yeah, from my perspective, looking to the future should be autonomous. The future should be green, right? So today there's a huge wave of electric vehicles, especially for the passenger vehicles. There are a lot of innovation going on. But if you look at the commercial space, the trucks, right? So they carry huge energy. They're running 24/7, and automate each truck or make each truck electric. That the value that can generate it is kind of multiple magnitude compared to the passenger vehicles. And in the commercial space where we're working at, the logistics centers, the private distribution centers, because those vehicles operate very centralized way, localized way, it's much easier to support the infrastructure and everything. So those should be actually the first the first to go to market opportunity to really test the future of electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, and going from there to really have the impact across all the sectors. So we are just at the beginning of this, so we are very excited to be part of this.
So we have a few minutes left, and so I want to pause for a second, and there's a mic right in the center. If we have questions, let's have them now.
Well, thank you for this nice introduction. My name is Ludger Fischer. I'm a visitor from Europe. Let me give you a few comments to the Boston travel system. So first, your roads are horrible. I use blue bikes. I love that. But your roads are really dangerous for blue bike drivers. So you would work in this. And I would like to encourage Reggie. You need a public transport system which deserves the word. Well, the railways are very bad, very slow, and very loud. I think your country is very noisy. So with the EV, this will helpful. Don't mean the firearms. I mean the normal trucks there. And I think all the cars are over-dimensioned. I see very, very big cars with one person in it or two maybe. So a mother drives her children. It's huge. Huh? These cars are that high. So we don't have that in Europe. I would like to invite you to Switzerland. I'm from Switzerland. So where 50% of our population is going in public traveling. So we have trains and trams and buses, and all are clean and not so noisy. And I think you need a little bit a renewal of your equipment first of all.
So
that's my comment. That's not a question.
Okay.
And I think you could
that.
see some of your future existing in some countries. And Boston is a rich city, very rich. I like it very much here. But you should invest a bit in your existing equipment. Get rid of these dirty trucks. And about this 15%, I mean, it's an education topic to say, shut down the motor if you're stopping. It's not an automation or AI. It's just natural intelligence to shut down the motor if you're stopping. Thank you.
Just one quick just thought to say is, I recognize all the concerns and challenges that we have with our system, and I spoke earlier today, and I know, will speak for myself and the panel. Part of my organizational goal and part of I know some of the panelists is the belief that we actually need to bring about change and the focus on different ways that the business community and the advocacy community can come together, support our public leaders in that change. So we are where we are with the challenges we face, but we're here as optimists with the belief that we can make that change.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. first of all, I might take you up on your offer to go visit you in
Yeah,
Switzerland.
we'll go to Switzerland.
But also, thank you for posing that observation as a way of challenge and also giving us hope of what it could be, right? I think that right now we're working on it. I have not totally lost hope. That, you know, fleet expansion and modernization is really key. And I agree with sort of the challenge and how you posed it. And yes, we're working on it. I would like to think so, at least.
Anybody else, or do we want to take the other? Let's have, you have another question? You have a question?
Yeah, I kind of had similar remarks to our friend, but I guess to make it more of a question, throughout this whole conference, I've noticed like a lot of enthusiasm for EVs, and that's great, but of course better than an electric car is no car. So I guess I was wondering two things. Maybe if, Reggie, you could speak to what's new and exciting that's like what can we look forward to in mass transit in the Boston area? And also, I'm curious if people have thoughts, like why is there this enthusiasm disparity when it comes to EVs versus mass transit to solve the problem of carbon emissions related to transportation?
Okay, so what's new and exciting? We're thinking about expanding span service, modernizing our fleet, the commuter rail, bus electrification. Advocates are pushing for that. Hopefully that's all funded, so that's something that we're pushing. I want to address the second part of your question because that's important. Perception and in advocacy, as well as this push for a lack of, you said, lack of enthusiasm, right? But I think that in the past few years, public transit in Massachusetts, in Boston in particular, has been very challenging. And that is an understatement. Having said that, I want to lift up the efforts as well of our public transit agencies in trying to acknowledge that this is a problem, that there is a problem, because that sort of acknowledgement has eluded, at least in my view, us for some time. So I think that's being worked on. I absolutely agree that we could do better. And the mindset is to get people in public transit. We can only reduce VMTs remarkably and notably and meaningfully if we do improve our public transit. Like I said in the very beginning, if our public transit system is not an option, we are missing the most crucial piece that will bring us to a sustainable future.
And I'll just add to that we really do support public transit as the choice that we would most rather people take, walking, biking, public transit. To that end, we are not trying to deploy curbside EV chargers where there's bus lanes or planned bus lanes, where there's bike lanes or planned bike lanes. We are trying to keep it as small of a footprint as possible to make sure that we are allowing for pedestrian use, for other uses. What we are acknowledging is that is a huge piece of the decarbonization puzzle, and to not electrify is to really fail at making sure that the transportation sector is more sustainable. So I think it's a hard both and, where you have to be trying to deploy in really smart ways and deploy in those outer areas where it is potentially transit deserts now, so that before some of those neighborhoods are served, they have the opportunity to make that transition to EVs. But I think we would have failed if we just further entrench the car as the pinnacle of success of what transportation success and the American dream look like. I don't think that would be a climate future that I would call a successful one. So.
Well, quick question.
Yeah, it's kind of related to the previous question, because it seems to me that the big thing is just that EV companies have billions of dollars in venture capital to spend on advocating for their solution, and they're being very successful at it. So I'm wondering, how can we sort of leverage the startup ecosystem to support public transit instead of just replace gas vehicles and the gas guzzling suburbia with just electric suburbia?
So,
I can see.
Yeah, Joe, I have some thoughts, but you guys,
No, you guys go ahead.
either of you have thoughts, or do you want?
No, you go ahead, Jamie.
Okay. So I think the important part is that you touched on it, is that we actually need to continue to incent people to found companies and to take on the hard problems, not just in the automotive side, but to do things like Net Zero Logistics is doing. I mean, this is multimodal. This supports a multimodal system. The bike and cargo uses, that's going to take away car trips. Some of Reggie's advocacy. But we also need to think about, we talked about some of the ways that autonomy is happening behind, and that's freight. But those same innovations and applied AI and AV is going to be, I think, incredibly enabling in how we think about our bus operations and our train operations. And so we sometimes, what I think about organizationally and some of the things we work on at Mass Mobility Hub is the software-enabled side of the business, where people who are out founding companies and doing things to not necessarily just think about the automotive side, but to really think about the backbone of how our systems work, to make our trains operate faster and better, to make our buses operate faster and better, to think about different routes and to optimize the way that we can give more service to more people in better service. Bringing people into that side of the startup is, I think, a huge opportunity. And I think we as a community need to create an open space and encourage people to take that leap, because we need their ideas. We need each of you to take the energy and passion that come with those questions and to take that leap. And I started with a group and a board, this Mass Mobility Hub organization, to help founders who want to take that hard leap and the courageous leap into that space. And there's people I know in the room who are doing it, whether it's in the maritime space or in other modes. It's really about all those modes, because they will help us, as Reggie said, have transit as the backbone, but help people with cars who need chargers or who need delivery or who have freight and all the other businesses that we've talked about today. We need each other to support a multimodal system. So I think that is the amount of time we have today. There might be more questions. And I'm sure we have a lot more we could cover, but I really want to thank all the panelists. They all come at this from different perspectives, but they're all leaders, thought leaders, and innovators in the transportation space. And as you can tell, and even tell with the questions, transportation really generates a lot of passion. I know it, and it's really been great to have some time with each of you to talk. Thank you.
Thank you.